Hello and welcome to today's sales chat brought to you by SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM. My name is John Golden from Pipeliner, and today I have the great pleasure of welcoming actually the founder and CEO of Pipeliner, Nikolaus Kimla. Welcome, Nikolaus.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so Nikolaus is joining us from sunny Los Angeles today, and also joining us as usual is Martha Neumeister, who is in Vienna, Austria. Hi, Martha.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi, and Martha makes sure everything runs smoothly, as well as managing the Twitter chat. For those of you who aren't familiar with this format, this is a 30-minute rapid-fire conversation where we focus in on one topic. So you can join in on Twitter at #SalesChats, and you can ask questions. You can answer the questions yourself. Plus, obviously, this whole show will be available on demand later. So let me first introduce Nikolaus, who I've had the pleasure of working with for over 3 years now, going into our 4th year. So Nikolaus is a 30-year veteran of the computer industry. He's founded and run several software companies. He and his company Uptime Technology are the developers of WorldShack, a risk intelligence platform that was eventually sold to Thomson Reuters for over $520 million. He is currently the founder and CEO of Pipeliner Sales, developer of Pipeliner CRM, the first CRM that application really aimed at empowering salespeople. He's also a prolific writer. You can access his ebooks on SalesPOP, his blogs and articles on SalesPOP on a wide range of subjects, sales management, leadership, and sales itself. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now we're going to get to the topic. And some people, when you saw this topic came up, may have thought it's an unusual one, because normally we talk about sales. People are thinking, okay, we're going to talk prospecting, we're going to talk maybe about sales call execution or closing or some other kind of tactical subject. But today we're talking trade. So Nikolaus, just to start off, why is trade important to salespeople? And it sounds like a bit of an intellectual topic, but is it really?
Well, this is a very good question, and I think most people don't understand what impact trade has in a great variety. Let's start with that. Most people looking only on the microeconomic, but when you look at the microeconomic and see how this has an impact in many areas, especially in the area that we can see today, why trade is getting so important to the Brexit, for instance. Yeah. This has a massive impact on companies. There's companies moving away from London or from England, or there's people they see it as a great opportunity to move to England and sell their products. So in our days, everything is interconnected. In a global economy, you cannot only look at your local situation. You have to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the macroeconomics. And the macroeconomics is about trade. Why we have so many troubles today? Because people feel in some areas of the world that the trade agreements that they have are signed maybe years ago, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is not any longer applicable to them. And so for that reason, there is a mistrust in some of these trade agreements, and it takes long to get through. So you cannot any longer separate that, and for that reason, you have to understand very deeply what impact has trade for what I am doing. If I'm just have a local, let's say, a shop in Los Angeles, well, then definitely not, yeah. But in the global economy that we are today, a lot of the people are really spreading out into the world, and they want to understand, and this is the impact.
So, okay, so there's micro and there's macroeconomic factors, yes. and they affect people, and obviously large-scale events like Brexit, bring it into focus and have a large impact. But at a local level, right? When we come down to the salesperson level, why is it important that a salesperson should understand the fundamentals of trade? Because I'm not sure if you talk to an average salesperson, would trade be one of the subjects that would initially come up?
Yeah, that's correct. But you cannot separate these topics anymore because, as I said, in a global economy, everything is intervened in each other. And when we think through that, we can really only focus on the stuff because it has an impact for what I am doing. I'll give you an example of a company. So let's say you are right now a company who wants to export to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And we have right now in the US maybe a movement where it says more made in the US. Yeah. So when you want to export something in the US and you have even your sales organization are massively invested in that, and maybe the product is in some form very competitive to other products, they are made in the US. Well, then if you don't understand this problem, then maybe you have an issue because all your investment can be gone. So we have to do that. On the other hand, I think we have to learn to think globally, and as the digital world is interconnected, we have to understand this complexity and make it real for a life or situation wherever we are. I'll give you another example. After the Second World War, it came out that after the Second World War, there were hundreds of different airports around the world. And there were these massive airplanes that were not anymore usable. So airlines started to have an idea, come on, we can bring the people, not only soldiers, we can bring real people from one place to another place. So the tourism started. At that time, there was just a couple of them, maybe 50 or 100. Today, most people don't understand that and don't know it. There are 49,000 airports. And I was recently really flying a lot around the world, from Europe and Florida, in the States a lot. And each airport, almost every airport today, when it's a bigger one, is a little city.
Mm-hmm.
And this little city in itself, to be honest, is very interesting experiences because, number one, everything what you do on an airport is a sales activity almost. You go there, you want to have maybe you eat something, you want to buy something, maybe you want even have to a massage, yeah, what people are offering. Yeah, you get your boots putzed, or you get maybe whatever. Yeah. These little cities are economically unbelievable, are a powerful impact of our society. And we know it's growing rapidly. Most people also don't understand that last year, and the world population is coming close to 8 billion, but last year, out of the statistics, there were 3.7 billion people traveling already.
Wow.
So everything is connected and interconnected and has an application to sales. So when we don't understand that, trade has an impact to this.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting point about the airports, and I agree with you. I mean, you can see the new international terminal at LAX has like a massive improvement. Same one in San Francisco. You go to Changi in Singapore. It's like a city in itself. You're correct. So let's bring it to salespeople themselves, right? So basically,
let's hang on for 1 second on the airport, yeah, because I want to bring one point that the people mostly don't understand too. Is I was in Munich a couple of days ago, yeah, and in that you have, when you enter the airport, an extremely closed system, and so for that reason, to this closed system, there is almost no accidents. Come on, what really happens? Well, last year there was this terror attack in Europe, in Brussels, or in somewhere in Europe. But the point is, normally in the 49,000 airports around the world, you have almost no any accidents, you have no crime, you have nothing really critical happening there. And this is, for me, the interesting. Why? Because you have a clear system. When you enter the airport, you go to a zone and you are really hardly controlled about everything. So these are little systems, these 49,000, I would call cities, have a perfect system for trade. for selling your goods. And there is a lot of companies that are really strategically thinking how I can sell on the airport my goods, my services to the people that are interested. Yeah? And in a safe environment, in a very safe environment. Think about that for sales. Wow.
Yeah, I know. And what I was going to say is that if you think about it, then the people who work in the airports, the people who work in sales in the airport are quite an important, they're quite important ambassadors almost for that country, for the experience that people have when they first get there or when they're leaving. So that kind of, again, reinforces, if you bring it down to the sales level, reinforces how important the individual salesperson is to the trade experience, right? Because they're the front line. They're the person who actually interacts with the customer.
This is why I believe we're in the greatest sales revolution in the sales age as ever in our life, as ever in history. Everything in the next 20 years will be geared around sales. Everything, yeah. And this is why it's booming and it's growing and it's rapidly really showing that we need more an understanding how to sell. So I'm an absolute against the mindset where people say sales will be not important. No, it's getting more important than as ever before. People don't want to be a number. They want to have this human interaction. For that reason, the salespeople have to understand trade is getting more. When I was born, 61, we had about 3.2 billion people. Right now, we are almost coming very close to 8 billion. That means every day you have more than 250,000 new customers. 250,000 new people need every day a diaper. Well, it's good for these companies, yeah. or whatever it is. You see, in the next years, we have so many new customers coming, and this is net. This is against our birth and death. 250,000. So in the last couple of days, we had a couple million people on Earth. They are needing their services? They're needing new products? They're needing something that you can offer as a salesperson or as a company. And so now you have to understand how you do that. What is the customer, or how wants the customer interact? And I think the airport is a perfect analogy where how you want that, because you want there what kind of experience you want. You want to have a nice experience because most of the people go on vacation. They want to have a fun experience, an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and let's face it, I mean, waiting around for airplanes isn't the most enjoyable experience when you strip it down to the basics, so that anything you can do to increase that, you make that experience better. But it is an interesting fact because I think, and you and I have discussed this before, but number one, there's a lot of people, as you rightly say, who's saying, oh, well, the death of the salespeople, or salespeople are going to go away and all that stuff, right? Which we don't agree with. But also, the way salespeople have been portrayed over recent years and in movies, and I think there's a statistic about how many movies negatively portray salespeople, etc. So what would you say to people who have either a negative perception of salespeople or salespeople who maybe have a negative perception of themselves, given their critical importance to trade going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was recently in West Palm Beach, and at the end of the event that we organized there at the Power Breakfast, I was asking the people, who is in sales? Please raise your hand. And so almost was raising the hands. So almost everybody was in sales. And then I asked a very interesting question. I said, who has the name sales on their business cards? Can you raise your hand? Guess how many people have raised their hand?
Very few, I would say.
None.
None?
None. Because the people are a little bit ashamed to take the word, I'm a sales manager, I'm a sales, I'm a sales rep. Yeah, it's almost like they are saying, oh no, this is bad. This is not something that is really a good job. Yeah. It's like in some ways that you are feeling, oh gosh, I'm in sales. And so it's so interesting. So on the one hand, sales is getting more and more and more important. On the other hand, people feel, oh gosh, I don't want to have the sales title. So they are creating right now business developer or business or whatever the title is, but it's all around sales, but not really naming the profession that you're in, because it has a negative image. On the other hand, when you go in a shop like what I'm regularly doing, or I go to my Santa Monica Apple store, and there is around 400 people, and I speak to these people, and I always go to the top manager and say, hey, what is the criteria really when you have people there, and how you perceive them? And he says, well, this is my sales force, because they are interacting with the customer. And I said to them, what are the criteria? It's not the technical stuff. It's how they interact with the customer, how they are talking to the customer, how they are really perceiving the customer. And so when you come in, they say, hey, hi, how you doing? And they are getting in a sense that the whole experience in the shop is enjoyable. It's something where you feel yet that you're treated in a way where you say, hey, this was nice, this was cool. So when you have that, you create a value. And when you create this value, what you're doing, you create in the value of the person, like in myself, or in that sense, the buyer, you create a respect what the buyer wants. Sometimes I go there and I just want to inform myself. They're not pushing me away and saying, oh, come on, you're not buying anything. No, they're just giving me the respect that at this time I'm shopping around, I'm more cruising around, and I just want more information. But when the experience is there, and when the people are really interacting with me, well, then I'm happy to buy something, and it's cool. And this is what the people want around the world. This is when you go and travel. You want to go to a city, you want to buy something. What you do? You want to go to the museum, have a good experience. You want to go to a restaurant to have a good experience. You want to go and all of that is an interaction of sales. And sales is changing,
and it's a really good point, because when you take it to business sales, why shouldn't that experience be just as good when it comes to B2B sales? Why shouldn't it be an enjoyable experience for both sides? Why shouldn't it be a mutually respectful and engaging experience for both sides? I think that's a great point. And one other thing, just talking about salespeople and their reputation, etc., you have long talked about this idea about trade and peace, right? And we live in quite a a world where there's a lot of conflict today, and threats of conflict. So talk a little bit about the history of trade and how it's applicable today in terms of the importance of the salesperson in creating a better environment for everyone, because I don't think people really understand. A lot of people really understand that piece.
Yeah, I think when I was first for myself discovering this, it was for me so clear at the end, but I was never looking at that. I was in a meeting and someone came up to me and said, do you know that the Austrian School of Economics Karl Menger, who was their founding father, and he was the person who was really their emperor's son teacher, and the emperor was knowing Karl Menger quite well, and he had a couple of students, and one was Bernhard Bamberg, who was their Secretary of Finance in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire twice, and he was warning not to go to war. But the point was, he said, and at that time, and this is so interesting, that people don't understand and they have forgotten, at this time, trade was enormous, happening around the world already. To the British Empire and to the Hungarian Austrian Empire, and so trade, the Germans, and everywhere you had already this happening, and the conflict in that moment was what it was doing in that moment immediately. bringing some barriers, and the borders were closed. And in that moment, Karl Menger made a very profound statement. And this statement was changing my mindset, because he said liturgy. He said, trade in itself, when you trade something, as my experience recently at one of the airports, when I was buying something for my family, and I had to speak with the salesperson, and she was really nice, and she helped me to better understand that. So we had an exchange, and this exchange was of goods and service. And so I created a value, and she created a value. But this value was creating also a situation that for both our sides, it was really helping us. And this point was creating a point that Karl Menger and the others were saying, this is a peacekeeping component. And this peacekeeping component was helping really to understand that in a good sales situation, when you are selling your house, what I did recently, and I had a perfect situation. At the end, we were sitting, we were toasting to each other, we had a drink, and we were happy about the sales situation. So both sides were winning, and we had two winners on the parties. When you are in that sense, and this is growing around the world more and more and more, and this is the interesting thing, if you can come up with that concept and really understand that people want what? People want to have the freedom, people want to have the leisure, people want to travel, people want to see, people want to buy, because the buying experience is a beautiful thing. And when you go, and you remember in the old days when you have been maybe on a bazaar at the end, and you had a good deal, you were even a little bit dealing with the seller and the buyer, and both sides were at least agreeing to that. When you were going to Turkey or you were going to Morocco or whatever, and you had this experience, what you were doing, they were offering you what? They were offering you a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and something, and you were sitting there and chatting after that. And this is where the world is really gaining more in that area of trust to another culture, trust to another person, trust to this person. And in the B2B area, I basically believe okay, the peacekeeping component is not so much relevant in that moment, because you are just changing and you are buying something that you want, but you want to have this experience, the experience you want to have. And from a seller perspective, if the seller understands that the buyer today is overboarded, how I can say that, sorry for my English, but I have to find the right words for that. But the buyer in many ways is often totally bombarded with so much information that he cannot really comprehend anymore. So what he wants from the seller, he wants that the seller understands the problem that the buyer is in. And when he understands the problem that the buyer is in, he's reaching out intellectually to put the shoes on of the buyer and walks in the shoes of the buyer. And in that moment, the buyer feels, oh, the seller understands my problem. The seller understands what I'm going through. I have to make a decision. It's not easy to really figure it out, what is the right thing to do. And when you do this, you are showing to the buyer a form of empathy. And in that moment, when you show this empathy, the buyer feels, what is the buyer feeling? He feels, oh gosh, the guy understands me. The guy understands my problem. The guy understands my complexity that I'm running through, and he's relaxing because he feels not that he's pushed in a sales situation.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the incredibly important takeaways is the empathy, or putting yourself in the shoes of the other person and understanding. And like you say, at the end of the day, it being an enjoyable experience. I mean, I remember, it's funny you mentioned Turkey. I remember going to the bazaars in Turkey years ago, and yes, you know, they started off with the ridiculously high price, you started off with the ridiculously low price, but everybody was smiling and laughing, and it was a bit of a game, and it was an enjoy, and you knew at the end of the day that somehow you'd reach a price that everybody was happy with, and like you say, then they'd smile, they'd be offering you tea, and you'd come away feeling like, well, that was, even the thing you were buying, the experience was sometimes even more enjoyable than the item you bought, right?
Correct. In a B2B area, John, the interesting thing is that when you are really reaching out to the buyer, and you understand the buyer's problem, and you go deeper and you say, I understand where you're coming from, you can address your things that you cannot do that for free. You can raise your value to the customer, and you can say, let's be speaking honestly. I bring a service, and this service has a price. You cannot push me down that I'm getting you a 50% discount, because I have to live too. You see, when you're entering in a situation where both parties are really honest to each other, and this has to do, then it's a very different situation, that some is trying to pull you over. Either the buyer wants to pull you over, or the seller pulls you over, and this is over. And this is what I think is the important, that the people will understand in the future in a network community. Because you see, in a network community, what you can ask in moment when the buyer has a good experience, what you can ask a buyer.
You can ask for referral.
You can ask for a referral, or you can ask for a recommendation.
Yeah.
Because when he says, hey, John, this was nice to talk to you. Do you have a friend who also, because we know this is the best marketing that ever can happen. This is the best marketing that ever can happen. And in that moment, the people, when they have a good experience, they would say, no, John, I don't know anyone. I will not refer you. Yeah. Come on. As real life is, when you have a good, enjoyable experience, you will say, it's like when you go to a restaurant and it was nice, and then you say to your friend, hey, I was in a good restaurant, you should go there. It's the same situation. And in the buying situation, if the seller is smart enough for the future to see that he's growing, he can ask the buyer, thank you, or thank you for the deal. You know, maybe we had right now this really good experience, and I thank you for this experience to work with you on this deal, and now we close this deal. Do you know, or maybe someone who can also be interested in my service, in my goods? I would highly recommend that the sellers start thinking on that.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting point, because going back to what we were saying earlier about when you said nobody in the room had salesperson on their card or whatever, if salespeople start thinking about themselves, start thinking about what they're doing in terms of trade, which is exactly what they're doing, right? They're trading a product or service, you know, for money, but they're also creating a value in that process, and a relationship. And if they start thinking about it in a broader terms like that, then let's face it, sales is one of the best jobs you could have, because it's really bringing it's bringing people together, but it's also helping people solve problems. It's helping people get their businesses to the next level, whatever it is. It's an incredibly important component, and one that people should feel proud of, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think this is another topic. It's the most complex job in the world, in my opinion, because you have to learn so many things in real sales, are really to understand it. I think we have to address that one day, John. How complex really sales is. It's the most beautiful. It's the most beautiful job. But you see, when a person, a seller and a buyer, had this experience, what we already talked, and we were going through, and he had this trade. And he's even willing, because he had this enjoyable experience, and you ask him for a referral or a recommendation, and he is willing to do that. This is creating peace, and this is what we need in our world. Because you see, we don't need this conflict, because you would never be in a conflict. You would never be in a conflict situation. And in that moment, you are creating a good environment for you, for the buyer, for the seller, for the company, for the environment where you are. And you walk out of the shop, and you walk out in something, and you say, wow, that was a good day.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end today's conversation. But we have one more question for you that we always ask every guest, Nikolaus, and that is your power tip, right? So what do you do every day to set yourself up for success? And I know your day tends to start very early. So I can't imagine what you do at 4 or 5 in the morning to set yourself up for the day, but let's let the listeners hear.
I try to focus on the things, first of all, they are in front of me. What is really topic number one that I have to focus? And then I'm trying always to mentally set me with every person that I'm trying in their shoes, what they're going through, what they are thinking, why they're acting as they are acting right now. And this is an exercise that I'm doing in the morning, and just say, well, it's a great every challenge, every day, every obstacle that is coming is a big opportunity to learn something out of it. It's never, it's every day and a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, listen, thank you, Nikolaus.
I hope it was not theoretically, but it's applying. I know it's applying. Macro and microeconomic has a correlation to each other. And you see, if we are going out and we have this positive attitude that the buyer wants, that the buyer is longing for that, and you talk to the people and you give them their feeling that they can experience it. Mm-hmm. Wow, then we are creating a better world, and this is what we should do.
Absolutely. And again, if you want to learn more about Nikolaus, www.pipelinersales.com. That's Pipeliner CRM. You can learn about Nikolaus and the product there. You can also read a lot more of Nikolaus's thoughts and ideas if you go to SalesPOP. That's salespop.pipelinersales.com, our online sales magazine where you can download his ebooks. I think you have a brand new one coming out pretty soon, if I'm right, actually around the subject of the sales mindset. So I encourage you to look out for that. Martha, thank you very much for keeping everything running smoothly. Any questions from the chat or anything that you want to raise? No, good. Thank you again for keeping everything going. Again, my name is John Golden, and we'll see you for another sales chat very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.